You think you are wise, Mithrandir. Yet for all your subtleties, you have not wisdom.
This scene perfectly demonstrates, in my opinion, the huge difference between book and movie Denethor. Because in the books, Denethor says something similar to this, but it is totally different at the same time. And I never really thought that I'd be doing this because I am not actually that big of a fan of Denethor in the book, like many of you might be. But I'm going to defend him in the book for just a little bit and show that he's actually a decent character. Not really decent, he's like a passable character. And how he truly is different from his movie counterpart. And it all starts with this one line. In the movie, Denethor says, "You think you are wise, Mithrandir, yet for all your subtlety you have not wisdom." Now in the book he says this, "You are wise, maybe, Mithrandir, yet with all your subtleties you have not all wisdom." And I know what you're thinking, that it's not really that different, John. But please, hear me out, because in the movie Denethor I think is a madman from the literal get-go. In the book he's only a madman about halfway through this chapter and about halfway through his grief. And I'm finding that he is probably the most heavily debated character that I have encountered in my first time read through Lord of the Rings. I don't know if there's anybody who's more debatable than Denethor, because I'm making a few essays about Denethor and it's just everyone has a different opinion. In the book, Denethor starts off as a man who is kind of just grieving the loss of his son, and someone who really just wants to best Gandalf in a battle of wills and a debate. He seems wise, but he's more shrewd and cunning, and he's a lot less kind than a king like Théoden. But I think he's not quite mad, at least not yet, although he is well on his way. There are hints in the text that he's been looking into the Palantir and searching the mind of Sauron, and it seems like his mind is being addled because of it. But he's not quite there yet. I think the straw that breaks the camel's back is Faramir coming back and being almost dead. And that is the moment that I actually believe he slips into insanity there. Someone posted a question on a video that I did yesterday about this, and they asked if this is madness or despair. And it's such a fantastic question, and I'd probably say it's both. But at this point, I'd say it's a little bit more like madness than it is despair. Now, he's mad before, or I think he's slowly going into it, as I don't really think the path to madness is something that just randomly happens. I think someone can kind of snap into madness with a singular moment, but the path to madness is a snap that's, I think, usually pretty well paved by the time that they snap. But Pippin actually recognizes this snap in Denethor's character and his behavior before he notices Denethor, and he thinks that he's actually a wise character and he looks almost more wizardly and wise than Gandalf does. But in this moment, and I think Pippin is one of the most perceptive beings in the book, if I'm being completely honest. I've wanted to write on this for a while, but I find hobbits to be some of the best judges of characters in the entire book. And anytime you get one of their opinions or their judgments, I just make sure that I listen. And Pippin has this idea very, very well in mind, because this is what he says about Denethor. No hour so dark had Pippin known, not even in the clutches of the Uruk-hai. It was his duty to wait upon the Lord, and wait he did. Forgotten it seemed, standing by the door of the unlit chamber, mastering his own fears as best he could. As he watched, it seemed to him that Denethor grew old before his eyes, as if something had snapped in his proud will, and his stern mind was overthrown. Grief, maybe, had wrought it, and remorse. He saw tears on that once tearless face, more unbearable than wrath. So Pippin, in a really astute moment here, recognizes there is a character change in Denethor. And I think this is one of the biggest book-to-movie changes that exists. And I think this specific line shows it best. Well, not the line that Pippin said, the line that Denethor says about Gandalf possessing all wisdom. Because in the movies, Denethor is crazy and tells one of the wisest characters in the book, "You think you are wise, Mithrandir, yet for all your subtlety you have not wisdom." Which does not even make sense as a sentence, if we're being honest. And this maybe plays into his insane nature. Is there a difference between being wise and having wisdom? I don't really think so. I think Denethor is making a stretch here. But his madness is even in denying Gandalf is even wise to begin with. Like, that is ludicrous to even say or to think about. You might have enough pride in your heart to think that you are smarter or maybe wiser than Gandalf, but no one is that much of an idiot that they would say that Gandalf lacks wisdom, just period. So the movie line makes almost no sense to me, except that it contributes perhaps to the idea that Denethor has gone insane because this line really doesn't make any sense. Even before Pippin and Gandalf get there, I think you kind of recognize this. In the book, it's a subtle difference, but he admits, you are wise, maybe Mithrandir, yet with all your subtleties you have not all wisdom. He's admitting that Gandalf is wise, and then I love how he actually just shows or throws this in there, maybe. Like he's almost doubting himself that he's saying that he's wise. In this moment, you can actually see the small little bits of madness peeking through the curtains of Denethor's personality, and I think this is the biggest difference from book to movie Denethor. It's almost like the madman exists, but he's buried deep within the character of Denethor, which weirdly in the books makes him a strong character. And I think this makes him so complex of a character. To have endured the death of a son and not just have had a full mental breakdown in the moment when you are surrounded by your enemies is actually kind of strong. I think if anyone that I love died, I would lose it if I were in the same situation as Denethor. Cough, cough. The same thing happened to Theoden, and he's still an absolute stud in the book. So just saying, I love Theoden so much. And so do I think that there is a bit of strength in the old body of Denethor. Yet, movie Denethor, you just realize the curtains are already torn back. They're almost making a full interpretation of Denethor that Tolkien, he lets us figure out for ourselves. And it's so much more gratifying in the book. And I mean, it's obvious which one I prefer and which one I think most people prefer. But I think book Denethor is just slowly, well, maybe actually quickly because it's taking 2 to 3 chapters, but he's letting his colors show over these chapters. He is mad when we first meet him, or at least he's going down the path of madness, but he isn't quite there yet. And as readers, there are things that he says that are just off-putting, like preferring one son over another and saying that he wishes Boromir and Faramir had swapped places. That's wrong. And then this moment actually comes before his snap, so it can maybe be chalked up to the idea that his insane grief is just overwhelming him at Boromir's death. But when Faramir leaves, the moment happens where it's the same exact thing in the movies, where he says, "But if I should return, think better of me." "That depends on the manner of your return," said Denethor. This was the moment that I think I was going, this man is awful. And I still think he's awful, but I also kind of think he's more nuanced in the book, and he's a lot more interesting of a character. And he's just overcome by grief for a son that he loved most, who is dead. Which I think is sad, but I don't really feel that bad for him either. I have so many strange feelings for Denethor at the moment. But again, this line shows the difference that the movies made for Denethor. In one, you have Denethor denying that Gandalf even has wisdom. In the other, he says, "You are wise, maybe, Mithrandir, yet with all your subtleties you have not all wisdom." He is saying that Gandalf does not have all wisdom in the world. And he's right. And this conversation is about Boromir and how Denethor believes Boromir would have given him the ring, and how he thinks he could protect the ring. But Gandalf knows better. He knows the ring, and he knows the power it would have over Denethor. And so Denethor, here in the books, has a line that I think perfectly, and I cannot emphasize how well Tolkien wrote this singular line. I think it perfectly encapsulates his struggle between grief and madness in one sentence. But in the movies, it's just madness. This is another example of why Tolkien is such a brilliant writer. In one sentence, we learn exactly how Denethor is flirting between all these different emotions going on in his head. His pride in thinking that he's wiser than Gandalf, his madness in calling Gandalf maybe wise, his grief in defending his belief that he knows Boromir better than he thinks Gandalf knows him, or Gandalf at least knows the ring. But still he has restraint in saying that Gandalf doesn't have all wisdom, which is a lot better than saying he lacks all wisdom, or he lacks wisdom. And I think this line, again, perfectly shows the character of Denethor in one small little line. And the movies just had to go and ruin it. But I am still a movie lover, to be honest. Now I just kind of get to annoy my family and friends whenever I watch this, because I'm going to be pausing every 5 seconds to describe what it was really like. And that brings me a lot of joy. So make sure you subscribe, like the video if you made it this far. Let me know what you think about this specific sentence, because I think the sentence is so important in this line, or in this book. And as always, remember to look toward Numenor that was, and beyond to Elvenhome that is, and to that which is beyond Elvenhome and will ever be. I'll see you in the next one.